There we go. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Hope you are well. Can you see me? Let's get our screen share up. Okay, hope you are well. Audio is fine. The Paraboy told me the audio is fine. Or is that the weird devil sign? Huh? But done sideways. All right, let me know if the audio isn't working. I'll get started in a minute. For some reason, my time on my computer is showing 10 minutes early. Thank you. Priyas effort for letting me know it's fine. Excellent. All right. Okay. I guess let's get to it. Got 10 people in the stream. All right. So what prompted actually this topic was just a question that I received. So I thought, why not just do a rundown through all of the verses which talk about fighting. I think this has been done by many. I think there's a lot of very good articles which talk about fighting in the Qur'an, when it shouldn't be, etc., and showing that basically, there's one verse which I haven't put here because I didn't want to make this overly long, which shows that the fighting in the Qur'an is only in the following circumstances: one, against those who fight you, okay, so ones who have aggressed; secondly, against the bugha, so the what are called, the rebels, those who split up a country, okay, so those who rebel, right? So the bugha, and then there is another verse which talks about fighting to relieve oppression, against others. But it has to be done properly, where you actually relieve oppression, but it's not that you go and take away the oppression of some people and add your own oppression on those people. So a group of people somewhere are oppressed, and you say you're going to go over there and relieve them of oppression, and you go and you fight, you free them, but then you establish your own oppression upon them. That is not what is needed. But anyway, I'm not going to speak about that particular verse. We're just going to go through the main verses one at a time. So the first verse which mentions fighting is, of course, has to be this one. Even though, of course, the Quran, wasn't relieved. It's not in chronological order. It's in Surah Al-Hajj, which is the 22nd surah. It came. This verse, at least, came before the verse which talks about fighting in Surah Al-Baqarah. So why do we know this is the first verse? Because it talks about permission. So that's obviously the first time it's been mentioned. So it says, أُذِنَ لِلَّذِينَ يُقَاتَلُونَ بِأَنَّهُمْ ظُلِمُوا. Permission to fight, or just permission, is given. Actually, the word fight is not here. Just saying permission is given to those who are fought, those who have been fought. يُقَاتَلُونَ. And we'll see that in the next verse. Not the next verse exactly, because we're looking at this passage. So from verse 39 onwards. But in the next passage that we will look at in Surah Al-Baqarah, we'll see the same phrase, right? يُقَاتَلُونَ, right? Those who are fought. So أُذِنَ لِلَّذِينَ يُقَاتَلُونَ. Permission is given for those who have been fought, or those who are being fought, بِأَنَّهُمْ ظُلِمُوا, because they were wronged, they were oppressed. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَعَلَى نَصْرِهِمْ لَقَدِيرٌ. And God is able to give them victory. Next verse explains who they are even more. الَّذِينَ, so those who are. And remember, I mentioned before that this, when God mentions something in the Quran, and then He says الَّذِينَ, then it's a definition. It's alif lam at-ta'rif, right? Like we mentioned last time with al-fasiqin. God says in one verse, مَا يُضِلُّ بِهِ إِلَّا الْفَاسِقِينَ. None are misguided by it except the fasiqin. And then the next verse explains, says الَّذِينَ ينقضون عهد الله, those who, break the covenant of God, etc. Okay, so that's a ta'rif. And just like also I mentioned about al-mu'mineen, so الذين آمنوا, who are they? الذين يعملون الصالحات, those who do the good deeds. So here again it's talking about who are these people, who are they, who are being fought. They are الذين أخرجوا من ديارهم, those who were expelled or evicted from their homes without right, okay, بغير الحق إلا أن يقولوا ربنا الله, except that they said our Lord is Allah. Okay, that was why they were expelled. Those are the ones who are being fought. They are being fought for religious reasons. They are being fought because there is being compulsion is being put in religion, and you'll see why I'm mentioning that later. Okay, they are being compelled, okay, in religion. Okay, they're not being allowed to say Rabbuna Allah. They're not allowed to say that our Lord is Allah only. Okay. And the next verse and the next part says is very interesting. It says, وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ, and if it wasn't for God checking or like repelling some people with others, لَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسِ بَعْضُهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ لَهُدِّمَتْ, demolished would have been many of the monasteries, churches, synagogues, and mosques in which the name of Allah is mentioned most. لهدمت صوامع وبيع وصلوات ومساجد يذكر فيها اسم الله كثيرا ولينصرن الله من ينصره, and God will help those who help him. What does that mean? Well, that means also that those who are defending all of these institutions, churches, synagogues, all of these places where God's name is mentioned, then anybody who's defending that or who is given support to that is also given support to God. وَلَيَنْصُرَنَّ اللَّهُ مَنْ يَنْصُرُهُ, God will give nasr to those who support him. Okay, so it goes into that same context. It's telling you what the support is being mentioned here. All of that is included. Why is it all included? Because the deen with Allah is la ikraha fi deen. There is no compulsion of religion. Okay, and you must support that. وَلَيَنْصُرَنَّ اللَّهُ مَنْ يَنْصُرُهُ, and God will support those who support him. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَقَوِيٌّ عَزِيزٌ, God is mighty and powerful and mighty. And the next verse again it says الَّذِينَ إِمَّكَّنَّاهُم, who is God is going to support? Allah is going to support those who support him. Who are they? الَّذِينَ إِمَّكَّنَّاهُم فِي الْأَرْضِ, those who when we establish them on the earth, أَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ, they establish salah, and they give the zakah, وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَمْرُوا بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, and they enjoin what is known, the good things which are known, enjoin what is right, it says here, but al-ma'ruf is what's known. Okay, وَنَهُوا عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ, and they forbid or they discourage what is munkar. Munkar is something you can see, evil that you can see open up. وَلِلَّهِ عَاقِبَةُ الْأُمُورِ. Now what does that also mean? It also means that those who, if we establish on the earth, they will fight to stop. Okay, they will be of those whom God uses to check that that mosques, synagogues, monasteries, churches are not demolished. So that also goes back to this verse. So these people who, when they're established on the earth, they establish salah and they give the zakah and they enjoin what is wrong and they enjoy what is right, forbid what is wrong. That includes this. That includes the protection and the preservation of all of these religious institutions where God's name is mentioned much. Okay, so that's the first verse. It's all about those who are fought. So again, so we're talking about defense, okay, and we're talking about religious freedom in the end, okay. Now all of these religious places should be open. Any place where God's name is mentioned should be open. And all religions in the end, they mention God's name, right? So every religion, no matter what it is, they have God at the top, right? Okay, so then comes the verse, the main verse in Surah Al-Baqarah. قاتلوا في سبيل الله, so fight in the way of Allah against who? الذين يقاتلونكم, against those who fight you. ولا تعتدوا, and do not transgress. Do not transgress here means basically do not be the ones who start the war. Do not be the ones who start the fighting. Okay. إن الله لا يحب المعتدين. This is even mentioned like this in the actual, tafsirs and stuff. It says fight in the way of God against those who fight you, and do not start wars. God does not love those who start wars. Okay, that's basically what it means. قاتلوا في سبيل الله, who against those who fight you. So they have to fight you first. Okay, and you do not fight them first. ولا تعتدوا, you don't start the war. إن الله لا يحب المعتدين, God does not love المعتدين. And this verse, and as well as the one before, but this verse in particular, it goes across all verses which speak about fighting in the Quran, every single one. Whenever there is any fighting mentioned in the Quran, if there is fighting happening, then this has happened first. Okay, that they have fought you first, that is why you are fighting. Okay, لا تعتدوا إن الله لا يحب المعتدين. This goes across all verses of fighting in the Quran. It really is that simple. Okay, you don't fight unless they have fought you. قاتلوا في سبيل, this is the fighting which is in سبيل which is mentioned. وقاتلوا في سبيل الذين يقاتلونكم ولا تعتدوا إن الله لا يحب المعتدين. And then comes the next part, which is often quoted, وَاقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُم. Yes, when you fight, yes, kill them wherever you are able to overtake them. وَأَخْرِجُوهُمْ مِنْ حَيْثُ أَخْرَجُوكُم, and expel them from where they expelled you. Remember back to the beginning? Okay, who are those people? الَّذِينَ أُخْرِجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِهِمْ, those who were expelled or evicted from their homes. Right? So they've taken your homes, now expel them from where they expelled you. I mean, expel them from your own homes. Okay? وَاقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمْ وَأَخْرِجُوهُمْ مِنْ حَيْثُ أَخْرَجُوكُم, expel them from where they expelled you from, and expel them from your own homes and take back your own homes. وَالْفِتْنَةُ أَشَدُّ مِنَ الْقَتْلِ, and fitna is worse than killing. Okay, and do not fight them at the Masjid al-Haram until they fight you there. Now this is, of course, makes it very clear that now we are talking about very specific circumstances in Mecca, but those who are expelled from Mecca, and now they are going to be fighting to take back their homes, right? So, somebody in Argentina can't do this. Somebody in Japan, in North America, they can't do this, right? You can't be, don't fight them in the Masjid al-Haram. It's meaningless for them. It's meaningless for anybody else in the world, except for those at the time who were expelled from Mecca. Nobody's being expelled from Mecca now, right? So it's saying, but don't fight them at the Masjid al-Haram, at Mecca, okay, until they fight you there. But if they do fight you there, then kill them. Such is the recompense of al-kafirin. كذلك جزاء الكافرين. And here you can understand again, kafirin not being equated with, they are the mu'tadeen. Okay, they are the people who in Mecca were the mu'tadeen. So, this verse is very much so talking about that time and place. Okay, that doesn't mean that it doesn't apply. It still applies in terms of, yes, when you fight in the way of God, you can fight, and you those who you are fighting against, you can kill them when you get them. Yeah, of course, you're in a war, you're in a battle, right? And if they expelled you from somewhere, from your homes, you expel them back from your homes again, retake your homes, and understand that fitna is greater than killing. Okay, but even after all of this, it says, فَإِنْ انْتَهُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Right, the next verse. But if they cease, then indeed Allah is forgiving and merciful. That means you too be forgiven and merciful. Right, if they stop, what does that mean if they stop? It means they were doing it first. Right, فَإِنْ انْتَهُوا, again, so we're going all the way back to here. قَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ, fight in the way of God against those who fight you. Right, but if they stop, then God is forgiven. فَإِنْ انْتَهُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ, then God is forgiven. Okay, but if they don't, what? قَاتِلُوهُمْ, if they don't stop, قَاتِلُوهُمْ حَتَّى, you keep fighting them until لَا تَكُنْ فِتْنَةٌ, until there is no more fitna. Okay, and what is fitna? Fitna is greater than qatl, right? As I said in this verse, right? The fitna is greater than the fighting, than actual killing. Okay, what is the fitna? Being expelled from your homes, the religious freedoms we talked about earlier, that all of these, the mosques and synagogues, all that should be destroyed. فَإِنْتَهُوا فَلَا عُدْوَانَ إِلَّا عَلَى الظَّالِمِينَ. Okay, لَا تَكُنْ فِتْنَةٌ وَيَكُونَ الدِّينُ لِلَّهِ, and so that deen can be for God. What does it mean that deen is for God? Okay, it doesn't mean that everybody becomes Muslim. Okay, otherwise it would make no sense when we're talking about the first verses where it's saying that if it wasn't for God, pushing back some people of others, then mosques, synagogues, churches, all of that would have been destroyed. All these places where God's name is mentioned. ويكون الدين لله is that all of these places where God's name is mentioned are open and free. Okay, الدين لله means لا إكراه في الدين. Okay, that's what God wants. No compulsion in religion. Okay, that's what ad-din lillah is. Deen for God means the deen is completely free as God wants it. Okay, that anybody can worship how they want. La ikraha fi din at all. Okay, and there's no fitna in making somebody say, expelling people from their homes just because they'll say their Lord is Allah or they say anything else. Okay, there's no expulsion from your home. There's no fighting you. There's no trying to destroy your places of worship. There's none of that. There is la ikraha fi din. There is no compulsion in religion. That is what it means when we say the religion is for God. That there's no fitna and the religion is for God. Okay, and again it says فَإِنْ انْتَهُوا, but if they stop فَلَا عُدْوَانَ إِلَّا عَلَى الظَّالِمِينَ, right? And if they stop again, so we're going just like before, right? فَإِنْ انْتَهُوا, if they stop, okay? If they don't, you keep fighting until there's no more fitna and all religions open for God. Okay, la ikraha fi din. Let's turn off my notifications. Okay, but if they don't, then فَلَا عُدْوَانَ إِلَّا عَلَى الظَّالِمِينَ, then there's no hostility except against those who are oppressors. You keep fighting against those oppressors. Okay, فَلَا عُدْوَانَ إِلَّا عَلَى الظَّالِمِينَ. Okay, if they desist, those who desist, that's great. Okay, they are no longer ظالمين, but there is no udwan. You keep udwan upon the ظالمين. So I hope that's clear. And then we get to the verse. Okay, so this is the verse which is generally considered to be the sword verse. And of course, the Mufassirin, you hear people talk about the sword verse. Nobody knows which verse is meant when they say, ayat as-sayf, the verse of the sword. Nobody actually knows what the Mufassirin, nobody identifies it. Some say it's this verse, some say it's that verse, etc. Generally, though, most people say that this is the verse, okay? 921, and many people ask about this, and they say, how do you understand this? And they call it the sword verse. It's not the sword verse. Rather, I call it the end of conflict verse. That's what it literally is. It's the end of the conflict verse. And in fact, this verse, it's the last. If you read Surah 9, which is one of the last surahs revealed, okay, and you read it from the beginning, all of the verses up to this verse are talking about fighting and who to fight. The next verse immediately after that is a complete change of subject. So it literally is the last verse. It means the ending, the verse which shows you the last thing that you do. So it's how to end the conflict. It's how to end the war. It's not about starting the war. Right? It's not about starting aggression or fighting. Okay. The first part, which says fight those who do not believe, it doesn't mean now we're going to, there's peace and now we're going to fight. No. Right, it's talking about situation is already in war, and now we're going to discuss how we're going to end it. Okay, how we are going to end it. Right. In this case, it's talking about those people mentioned in here. It's I can't get into this here as much, but it's talking about specifically those who they were fighting at that time. Okay, those who they were fighting at that time, which include basically it was this alliance which had to do with the Byzantines, some of the Jews who had been expelled from Medina, and some of the hypocrites, and the recently converted hypocrites from Mecca, and it also had to do with the assassination on the prophet, the attempt to kill him on the way back from Tabuk, and the Masjid al-Dirar, the mosque that was set up by the hypocrites just outside of Medina, and they're wanting to place a new prophet there, basically. Okay, so it was between Abu Sufyan and his confederate Abu Amr al-Fasiq. But even if we just put all of that aside, okay, what does it say? Just let's look at the verse by itself. Never mind the history. What does it say? It says, fight those who do not believe in Allah or in the last day, and who do not consider unlawful what Allah and His Messenger have made unlawful, and who do not adopt the religion of truth from those who were given the scripture. So these are the people they were fighting. Okay, when do you fight them? Until when? Until they give the jizya an yadin. Here it says willingly, but I don't think that's a very good translation, but an yadin means from hand or from strength, so they have some strength while they are humbled. And they say that this is sort of like something for both sides. Okay, they are able to give the jizya from a position of strength, from yad. Okay, but at the same time they are saghirun. Okay, you are fighting them because they were aggressors, they aggressed, and now you're going to fight them until they are humbled and surrender. Okay, until they're humbled and surrender. And the jizya is basically war repatriation. It's something which was known. The reason why it's not defined in the Quran is because something which was known. It's known, the world over, in ancient times, in modern times. The defeated people have had to pay war reparations, or I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing it right, but have had to pay the victors, due to the damage of war. Okay, so this is basically the jizya. Okay, so fight them until this. So let's take a step back again. So you fight them. When they fight you, you fight them. Okay, قاتلوا في سبيل الله الذين يقاتلونكم, fight in the way of God against those who fight you. All right, so the war has started. They've started it. We're going to fight. Does that mean we keep fighting until we exterminate these people? Kill them to the last person? No, it says until they give the jizya. Right, so this is where you stop. It's not going to be, we're not going to be naive and fight, and then they say, okay, we surrender. That's it. Oh, good, excellent. You've stopped, surrendered. Now we just turn our backs on you and walk away and leave you as you are. No. Okay, you started the aggression, you started the war. When you fight them, until you make them surrender. But when they surrender, they have to pay something. Okay, they have to be put in a position where they will not straight away attack again. They will not straight away attack and make a new war. Right. So part of that is by taking away some of their financials and their ability to think, by making them pay. Okay, they pay a certain amount, and you have that that sort of thing. It doesn't mean all of these categories of people have to pay this. Okay, these were the people who were being fought at the time. God is commanding the Muslims at the time who are in war with these people to fight them until this. Okay. For example, the Jews of Najran, the Christians of Najran of South Arabia who came to the Prophet, he didn't fight them. He didn't have to pay jizya. Not all the Christian tribes in South Arabia had to pay jizya. The ones who had to pay the jizya were some of the northern tribes. Like I said, these were the ones who basically were in alliance with the Byzantines, and like I said, with Abu Sufyan and some of the hypocrites, to try to organize a counter to the growing influence of Islam in Arabia at the time. Okay, because at the time, of course, basically Mecca had been conquered. Taif had entered Islam nominally, as they say, and most of the Quraysh, of course, the Tulaqa, had entered Islam, and there was a movement between in the background to try to overthrow Islam again. So this was, this was one of the reasons why Abu Sufyan went to visit Herakl, right, in Byzantine. In Bukhari, there's a hadith which most people know, that that Herakl asked the people who were there who was the closest to the Prophet, and Abu Sufyan stepped forward and he asked him some questions about him, right? It's my belief that whole story, which it's Abu Sufyan narrating it, he's saying that this is what happened. It's just a cover. It's a cover. Abu Sufyan was there, and he was in correspondence with the Byzantines about ways to stop the growing power of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is about that. I'm not sure if I explained it as well, but the key thing I highlighted here is that it's telling you until, right? So until means what? Okay, this is the end, right? This is where we stop, right? And you can see that by, even in the passage, that was the last verse in the whole passage, which started from the beginning of surah, that speaks of fighting. Okay, so, the whole surah is speaking about fighting. Up to there, mentions this, fight them until this, and then that's the end. Okay, that's the end of the passage. Now, the next verses are a completely different subject. It's قال اليهود عزير ابن الله. The Jews say that Uzair is the son of God, and the Christians say that Messiah is the son of God, etc. So it starts talking about a completely different subject, because this is now done. Okay, this is done. All Right. Later in the surah, though, you have two more verses which speak of fighting, but they are, more for specific reasons. So we'll look at those. So one of this is this verse, which is right before the verse about Nasi, the one which is mentioned about Nasi, which some people are analyzing to try to, they think that the actual calendar should be a lunar, a solar lunar calendar. That there should be a month inserted every so many years to keep the months in balance. But that's the next verse. The verse before it is this. It says, إِنَّ عِدَّةَ الشُّهُورِ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ اثْنَا عَشَرَ. Indeed, the number of months with Allah is 12 lunar months. In the register of Allah on the day that He created the heavens and the earth. Of these 4 are sacred. This is a correct religion, so do not wrong yourselves in them. Right, and now we have the mention of fighting again, and this is in verse 36. So it's a long way removed from the last verse we mentioned, which is 29. Right, so it's like I said, that verse is a real verse which ends the discourse on fighting. But this one is just saying that in the sacred months, even in the sacred months, as we said before, do not fight them in the Masjid al-Haram, in the sacred precinct around Mecca. Do not fight them there until they fight you. And the same thing when it comes to the sacred months. You are not to fight in the sacred months, but it says here, and fight against the mushrikeen. Here it says disbelievers, which is the mushrikeen. وَقَاتِلُوا الْمُشْرِكِينَ كَافَةً كَمَا يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ كَافَةً. Fight against them as they fight against you. Okay, so again, it's when they fight against you. Fight against them. قَاتِلُوا الْمُشْرِكِينَ كَافَةً, all together, just as they fight you all together. So when you have this whole alliance group of the mushrikeen, they are fighting against you together. You also together band together and fight against them. Right? وَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. And very important here again, it's mentioned. Know that God is with al-muttaqeen. Why is taqwa being mentioned here? Because again, from taqwa is that you do not, remember we mentioned that taqwa is the opposite of udwan, right? Aggression or starting a war, right? So be people of taqwa, do not start the fighting, especially in the sacred months, okay? And know that God is with the muttaqeen. And one more verse in that surah, right towards the end and the last page, it says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا قاتلوا الذين يلونكم من الكفار وليجدوا فيكم غلظة واعلموا أن الله مع المتقين. Again, know that God is with al-muttaqeen, right? So these are like extra, because the Qur'an addresses the situational things that came up in the Prophet's time. The Qur'an addresses them. Okay, so the actual final verse which details the whole issue of the fighting in the beginning of this surah is this. But these two verses were sort of they're like extras for situations that came up. Maybe they were asking about fighting in the sacred months, so this was brought about. Because some of the mushrikeen did fight against the believers in the sacred months, and they knew they shouldn't be fighting in that. But the Quran says no. If they fight you in those months, you fight as well. Okay, you can't just sit there and let them kill you, right? But again, what's mentioned is, remember, keep the taqwa. And again, here it's talking about, this was basically about those, some of the believers, they did not want to fight some of those who were fighting against them around Medina, those who are close, okay? Those who are close to you in territory, you can be more, people would be more hesitant about fighting against them, even if they fight against you, right? Because I don't want to cause trouble, right? Sort of like a reaction to a bully. Okay, the bully bullies, right? And you sort of like just passively, I don't want to. No, if you don't stand up, and draw the line against aggression, they will keep aggressing. Okay, so the verse was basically about that. Be firm. Right, be firm. Stand up to the bully. Right. وَلْيَجِدُوا فِيكُمْ غِلْظَةً, the verse is, and let them see in you some harshness. Right. Don't let them see you soft to them just because they are around you, because they are not going to respect that. Right? They're not respecting that. No, show some teeth. Right. Show some teeth. Right. Stand up to the bully. Show that this is the line. It doesn't matter that he's sitting next to you in the in your class or whatever. No, you have to draw the line and stand up. So that's all this verse is talking about, which is what this was a verse which prompted me to talk about this, because somebody asked me to. Okay, and again, like I said at the end of it, it says, "And know that God is with the muttaqin." So again, a caution at the end of this verse, this extra verse, that even though we are saying, God is saying to you to, to be harsh and to fight against them. All right, when need be. Again, remember that all the verses of fighting in the Quran, they fall under the mandate of fight against those who fight you. Right, so if they fight against you, no, you fight against them, even if they are adjacent to you, and don't be soft just because of that. Let them see, that you can show, you won't stand for aggression, but at the same time you maintain taqwa. And so again, remember always that if I take us back to the first verse, which God says, fight in the way of God against those who fight you, and do not be of the mu'tadeen, do not transgress. Inna Allah la yuhibbul mu'tadeen. God does not love al-mu'tadeen. God does not love those who start wars, who start aggressions. And again, in all of these verses, we say truly God is with the muttaqeen. And remember also that God says, Inna Allah yuhib al-muttaqeen. God loves those who are muttaqeen, and He does not love those who are mu'tadeen. Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to go through today. All right, let's have a look at the chat and backstage. Okay, looks like some of our regulars are having their regular discussions. All right, good, nice. We have a question from, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. My question is out of topic, but I wonder why Jews are God-chosen people. Surah Al-Baqarah, God says that He prefers them to others, but He does not say why. I guess no one knows the answer. No, I mean, in Anni Faddaltukum ala al-alamin is basically God, Fadl, the word Fadl, right? The actual word Fadl, where we talk about, preferring somebody or the other. It's not about really so much about superiority that much, okay? When you talk about the Fadl of something, it's the leftovers, right? Right? Like you can say, you have some leftover wealth, okay? Who will you give it to? Okay? The person who you've given it to, that's the person you've done some tafdeel, okay? Tafdeel. You've given them the fadl that you have, the extra. So, okay, so tafdeel, when God says He made, faddalahum al-alamin, means He gave them something extra. What did He give them extra? Prophets, okay? God sent prophets to them. وَأَنِّي فَضَّلْتُكُمْ عَلَى الْعَالَمِينَ. Okay, God chose them to give them prophets, okay? It doesn't mean that they are inherently better or anything like this, okay? It's got nothing to do with that, okay? But God chose them to give them prophets, okay? And this was in the end, who are they, right? It was really that God chose Ibrahim alayhi salam. That's who God chose, right? And the Jews are just the descendants of him, okay? And it's God chose in the lineage of Ishaq and Yaqub, to put most of the prophets. Okay, so it's not that they were it's not that they were have anything better or more special, or it's got nothing to do with that. It's what they are given more, and with great power comes great responsibility, right? So they are given more, and more is expected of them. Okay. Yeah, there you go. Okay, the covenant with Jacob and the abundance of prophets, right? So yeah, they were given prophets and a covenant, and it was and the covenant wasn't given to for their sake. It was given for those righteous people. Okay, just like now. I mean, imagine all of us here. Well, inshallah, most of us would want to have children, and you have children. You'll be making dua and asking blessings for your own children, right? If God answers that, all right, your children will have some sort of blessings from God, okay? But it isn't for your children's sake, the extra. It's because of you, because you asked, okay? Because you asked. And so Ibrahim he was a prophet who was very much like that. He made a lot. It's mentioned in the Quran how much dua did he make for his offspring. This is what he wanted. He wanted from my offspring to be imams, to be leaders, right? This is one of the things he wanted. Other prophets, maybe they didn't want that. They didn't ask for that. Okay, but Ibrahim, he wanted that. Okay, and God, answered that for him. All right. Okay. So we have backstage only one person. Aslam, I'm going to bring you on. Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, walaikum assalam.
Hey, how are you?
I am good. There was monsoons here, bit rainfall, but as of now it's good, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Good. Excellent. Good to hear from you again. Anyway.
So I really appreciate taking on this very controversial subject about fighting, and the most important thing about this stream, it's very topic oriented, like any topic of like iman or like fasikun, and then how many times this particular word has occurred in the Quran. So these all things are addressed. So it is assisting us in doing tadabbur of that. So it's really helpful for us as well.
Alhamdulillah. Good. Yes.
So in reference to the thing, certain things, I mean, you mentioned about that word katiluna, like it's translated as fight, but sometimes some people translate as kill. So
there are two words. There's qatilu and there's waqtulu. So the one means kill, one means fight. One means kill, one means fight. So there are two separate ones. So for example, let me go to the one where they say kill them wherever you find them, that verse. Like here, right? So this verse here, I don't know if the highlighting is shown on your screen, but here, waqtuluhum, this word it means kill them, means kill. Qatil is like in the title thing, so it has an alif. So qatilu, the alif after the qa, that means fight. Okay, without the alif would be waqtulu, qatulu, right? So they are different. They are different words. Okay, so I mean the alif here, it's written as it's sort of written on the it's not an actual rasm of the Quran, right? So it's there, but it's not written in that way.
All right. So basically, what I have understood is that you had mentioned what the Quran is emphasizing only two situations wherein this fighting or this killing can be applied. What is happening is that generally, let's say a secular government is there. That secular government will not take into consideration religious laws, but they will allow you to practice faith. Whatever faith, even if you want to give Quran, they will allow. The fighting that is happening in today's suicide bombings and all, they're using this evidence to fight because these secular governments are not following divine laws. So do you for me, I feel this is like a corruption. I accuse them of doing fasad filler, these suicide bombers. But they're using the same.
What's that got to do with being able to fight them though? If they have secular laws or not secular laws, that's no reason to fight them.
Yeah, so they're using these.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so they are using these evidences to fight them, and so whatever corruption is happening, so can we say that whatever they are doing, they are blameworthy of doing fasad fil ard?
Yeah, I mean, somebody could be doing fasad fil ard, okay, fasad fil ard, but that doesn't mean you're allowed to fight them, right? When we talk about fasad fil ard, individuals can do that, okay? That doesn't mean you're allowed to go out and kill or fight those individuals. When we talk about qital, we're talking about actual, armies, right? Fighting versus fighting. We're not talking about just, going out to kill or this or the other, right? So we're talking about qital. Qital is like army fighting an army. Right, and it says you do not fight except against those who fight you. Right, so and that's it. So I don't see. It doesn't matter if a government has laws which are not by what God has has ordained, or that doesn't matter. It's not about that. Okay, it's not about that at all. It's your government. It's who they are the ones who are supposed to be abiding by that. They are supposed to be not fighting against another country unless they fight them. Okay, it's not from sort of bottom up.
So it doesn't allow any group or something to topple a government or like that. It doesn't allow these verses.
No, it's not allowed to topple the government at all.
Yeah, because these people, groups and media and all, these things are coming up because these people use these verses to do anti this activities. These all verses. So we wanted to understand it.
Your audio is very, very choppy. I couldn't quite get that, but no, it doesn't mean you're allowed to top governments, but that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to do revolutions, or a revolution against the government is not allowed. It is allowed, right? When you're talking about the corruption, it's the point is if when there's facade of like oppression, one people being oppressed against others, and they're asking for assistance, right? There's like I said, that verse, I didn't mention it in the stream, but as another, there is a verse which says, وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَالْوِلْدَانِ وَالنِّسَاءِ وَالْوِلْدَانَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَجِدُونَ, those who are not able to find any help. They say, oh God, send us from your presence a helper and an ally, right? So but this again is about those who have we're talking about armies or the people going out to free oppression elsewhere. Okay.
But what I feel is that they have completely missed the purpose of this thing, these verses. Instead of using the verses for this purpose, it's being used, or it's being popularized to establish an Islamic something kind of this thing. This is if you can, like, I believe you may also agree that these verses are being used to like create some kind of Islamic like that instead of the.
Yes, of course, but they're not creating really anything Islamic, right? They're just creating, it's just empire building, right? Empire building. They're trying to just create empires. Same thing as sort of like in the Arab conquests, right? When the Arabs went conquering all the way up to Spain, and it was just conquest. They were fighting against people they had no right to be fighting against. Right? They had no right, and they say, "Oh, we're going to, spread the." It wasn't. It was for the sake of the caliphs, right? They say we're going to go spread the religion of Allah, and this they didn't go for that. That wasn't the reason. It was just to build the empire and the caliphs to occupy the people with the because the common people, they like this. Okay, we won, we beat this country, we did. It occupies them away from their own oppression.
Correct. And because of this sensitive subject, what happened, like after that 9/11 happened, many people were wondering what kind of book is this that teaches suicide bombing. It kind of created a curiosity as well. I mean, what kind of book is this that suicide bombing?
Many people conversely became Muslim after 9/11, right? You hear many stories about that people became, because they read then they read the Qur'an, right? When that was the reason. It wasn't because nobody became Muslim because of their admiration for 9/11, but when they it put Islam for them on the radar. They said, okay, let me read the Quran. They read the Quran, and many became Muslim because of the Quran. It wasn't because of it had nothing to do with 9/11, other than 9/11 put Islam on the spotlight. That's all.
And one small thing that I wanted to understand, this is a very controversial thing about, like, just your opinion about this thing of suicide bombing. It's a heated discussion. Sir, can this thing be used for a person to go and do suicide bombing? What are your views on that? This is a very this thing.
No, I don't believe you can have suicide bombings at all, especially suicide bombings against against what, like in marketplaces, not in mosques. That's where most suicide bombings seem to be going, right? Marketplaces and mosques. right?
Yes.
No, you can't, because Allah says, don't kill yourselves. Don't kill
Hmm.
yourselves. Right?
Hmm.
And another verse, لا تلقوا بأيديكم للتهلكة. Don't throw yourselves by your own hands into destruction. Right?
Hmm.
What is suicide bombing other than that? Right?
Hmm.
So no, in suicide bombing, you're going for they say okay, but a person could, in a battle, right? He just goes directly into the
Yeah,
into to
this
the
thing.
enemy, to the enemy,
This,
and with you know a goal to just fight until they die. That's different. You could end up fight. Many people go in and fight. You will hear about those who fight until they died, but you won't hear about in the end there are those who fought and fought and fought, and in the end they didn't die, right? And they won in the end, right? Um, so no, you can't. Somebody going to fight until death. Their death
hmm.
is not certain. Their death is not
Yeah,
certain.
absolutely.
They could be
Mhm.
victorious, but somebody going as to be a suicide bomber. No, they are killing themselves. They are killing themselves.
All right. I really appreciate like you being so brave enough to discuss about this very controversial subject
Hmm.
and addressing this thing. So Jazakallah.
Yeah,
Thank you
no
so much.
problem, no problem. Afwan. Jazakallah. Thank you for coming on. Um, Honestly, though, I don't even see this as very controversial because no, it just seems it's so clear, right? And Quran is saying, fight against those who fight you. Even that verse which seems to trouble so many, the verse of the sword, as they say. It seems very clear. If you were to take this to mean to fight everybody, in terms of this means every single person who's not Muslim, etc. Right? It's still confined by the verses which were revealed in the beginning, which talk about how when hostilities are to start. Now this verse came at the end of at the end of the prophet's time, pretty much, right? In Surah 9 was one of the last surahs revealed. Are we going to say that this is when a verse was revealed, which shows how or who to fight? No, the fighting was pretty much finished by then. It was pretty much finished by then. This is talking about fighting against this new alliance. Okay, this new alliance between all of these people. Right, it wasn't one group of people. Fight those who do not believe in Allah or in the last day and do not consider unlawful what Allah and His Messenger have considered unlawful, and who do not adopt the religion of truth from those who are given the scripture. Okay, it's talking about these people all together, right? And then it says here, min alladhina utul kitab. Okay, it says from them. It doesn't say all of them. Min alladhina utul kitab, of those who were given the books. It's not even talking about all of them. And it says fight them until they give the jizya, right? So it's talking about how to end the conflict, right? It's just like if we in any sort of uh, war policy, or if you have like a document which talks about how to fight. Okay, rule number 1: fight against those who fight you. Rule number 2, is whatever. Rule number 3, rule number 4. Okay, now this here, you have other rules further down. Okay, rule number 5: fight until fight either until you die, or until they surrender, or until they pay the jizya. Fight but do not turn your back, etc. Right? So each one follows the other, right? Just like in any sort of almost in contracts, right? You have point 1, point 2, point 3. You can't take one point outside of the whole contract. Right? You can't treat it something separately. No, it's within the other clauses. And this is within that. It's clearly within that. So I just don't see it as very controversial at all. Maybe I mumbled my way through this a bit, but that's how I see it. All right, let's see if anybody else we have any questions. We had a question, just a minute. I'm not sure that's what I was thinking. What about a group of believers fighting against an oppressive people or government? And what are the plan qualifications and oppression, expulsion from home, and enslavement? Yeah, this is one of the, this is a verse. Maybe I should, I kept that verse separate to maybe tackle it by itself, right? So the Quran does talk about, fighting to alleviate oppression. Fighting to alleviate oppression, as sort of like what the Western world has, their excuse for getting into, Western governments, their excuse for getting into Iraq and these places. They're saying they're going in there to, to help bring freedom to the people, right? That's what they say, okay? And most of the world, they look at that, and who believe that anyway, they see that yes, that's a noble thing to do. Okay, we had a vicious dictator in Iraq, so let's go in there and free the people. But it has to. That wasn't the case as much. Most of the Iraqis actually were quite happy with their country. They might not be happy with Iraq, but with Saddam, but it was very prosperous at the time. That takes more somebody more knowledgeable about the current affairs about that. But the point is that yes, the Quran does speak about that, and inshallah maybe we'll look at that verse another time. I don't know if next week or just save it for a whole other thing. Yeah, oil grabbing definitely, as we all know, right? So it wasn't to really alleviate oppression, okay? But the Quran does make that thing. You can't, you can't be a nation, right? God-fearing nation, to set up justice, as the Quran says, and next door, or a nation, nation away, you have a whole group of people who are being completely oppressed, evicted from their homes, enslaved, killed, whatever is happening to them, like the maybe like the in China, what's happening to Muslims there, and say, okay, we're not going to do something, like we're just going to no, then in istansarukum فعليكم في الدين فعليكم النصر, right? If they seek help from you, then upon you, you should give them help. Okay. All right. I think let's have a look at any more comments. Salam again, Adriana. Good to see you. All right. I think we can end that there. I don't think there's anybody have any more questions. You can put in the comments. If not, we might end the stream there. I'm very. The stream seems very weird. It's telling me that it's we've been live for only half an hour, but I'm sure we've been live for much longer than that. We're coming up to 1 hour by my count. Yeah, so there are people who want to separate from a state. I'm not sure if you mean the Kurdish people in Iraq or something, but yeah, there are people who wish to separate from a state due to whatever reasons. But so there's the other people who are mentioned, fighting is talked about in the Quran, or the Bugha, right? It's talking about in the verse in Surah I think it's in the الحجرات فإن بغت إحداهما على الأخرى فقاتل التي تبغي حتى تفيء إلى أمر الله. Okay, that when two groups of Muslims, of believers, of your brothers, if they fall into fighting, right, then فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا, right, فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا. But then if one transgresses against the other, then fight against the transgressor one. فإن بغت إحداهما على الأخرى فقاتل التي تبغي حتى تفيء. Fight that one. Everybody else also fight that one which is, rebelling excessively, until it comes back to the affair of God. So maybe that's another verse we need to look at in a separate stream. But the main one that I want to talk about is the main concept of qital in the Quran. Is definitely all comes under the mandate, fight against those who fight you. And the verse which is talked about, which is said to be the sword verse, I consider it to be the verse which is showing how to end the conflict. So at the end of a conflict, what is done. All right. Yeah, reparations. Yeah. Do you think do you consider jizya to be tax or reparations? Yeah, I think it's reparations. I don't think it's a tax. It's not like something that they're gonna have to be paying, forever, right? It's not something they're gonna have to be doing a yearly tax forever. No, there's a certain amount, right, that they're gonna have to pay maybe in installments, like Germany had to pay at the end of the war, at the end of World War II. Japan had to pay war reparations. Back in ancient times, the wars between the Babylonians and the Greeks, right? This is something which has been known throughout the ages. Okay, war reparations, right? Something which is paid, and it keeps the vanquished sort of from rising up straight away and attacking again. Intent to popularize other Muslims in the United States. Yeah, so there are some who are, but this is actually these are the bugha, right? These are the bugha, the ones who are trying to separate and then fight against the actual state. As for example in history, you had Muawiyah, who was fighting against the Caliph Ali. Yes, that was a case of bugha, right? So in that case, yes, you fight against the bugha. Okay. All right. Okay. I think we'll end that there. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you so much for coming on. And once again, a reminder that if anybody has anything they want to be presented, they can put it in the comments. And inshallah, I'll try to present it myself for you next week. If I'd prefer if you come on yourself and present any contemplation you like. And anybody else who has something they'd like to share, please ask them to come on, and inshallah, we'll be happy to host them. Jazakumullah khair, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.